going on, everybody? It's your man, Louie T, here with a brand new installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Hope everyone is doing splendiferous as we are on the other side of Father's Day weekend. It was a great weekend, man. I really enjoyed myself with my family, with the kids. Um, Played some dominoes, played some spades, went to a cookout. The kids got to go to the Universal Soul Circus. We had a time this weekend. It was a lot of fun, man. A lot of good quality family energy this weekend. So now it's back to business, and number of topics to get to. The Cincinnati Bengals are back to being the Bungles again. We'll talk about them and their off-season escapades and them being up to their normal no good. We'll talk about some of the worst quarterback rooms in the NFL heading into the 2025 training camp period. There are some teams with some very, very nasty lineups where you just thinking to yourself, how in the hell are they going to be super competitive this year? You never know, right? This league is unpredictable that way. It's not the NBA or Major League Baseball where we pretty much know who's going to be good and who won't be before the season starts. Anybody could come out of nowhere, as we saw last year. You know, the Commanders are a great example, right? No one expected them to do what they did last year. The Vikings are another example. No one expected them to win 14 games. You just never know who's going to jump up and be that team. But there are some quarterback situations that give you pause. If you're a fan of these teams, you just got to be looking at your situation and saying, I don't know how we come out of this thing alive, or at least going into the season feeling good about what we have. But again, the parity that is the National Football League and the way that it's set up gives you hope. Every team has hope this time of the year, but we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about some National Basketball Association, right? First big offseason trade took place on Father's Day, including my Memphis Grizzlies. I wish I could say I didn't see it coming, but I did. I think I even mentioned it to you guys that offseason changes were coming to the Memphis Grizzlies. I don't think they're done either. I don't think they're done retooling that roster. Don't expect Tripp or Ja to be traded or anything like that, but do expect more moves. They have so much optionality now with all of those picks that they were able to pick up in a ridiculous haul that I did not see them getting for Desmond Bane. We'll talk about that. NBA Finals, Game 5 tonight. Very pivotal Game 5. Series knotted up at 2. We'll talk a little bit about that as well, and a host of other topics we will get to today on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 509th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So many topics to get to. I'm going to be all over the place early in this podcast before we get a narrow focus and get on to topics that relate to the National Football League. But I'm going to be all over the place first. And the first place I'm going to start is the NBA, right? Big trade yesterday. I don't know if that's something the NBA actually likes. I know the NFL, they make sure that this can't transpire, right? Because there are no trades or anything that can take place while the season is still going on. So you don't have to worry about the spotlight being stolen by a trade during the biggest set of games in your season. But that's exactly what happened because the NBA schedule is, to me, very unstructured and all over the place. You've got draft lotteries in the middle of the postseason. The draft is like literally 10 days from now, I believe it is 9 or 10 days away from now. So right after the finals is over, boom, NBA draft takes place. You got teams working out prospects and, dotting their I's, crossing their T's during the finals. So you're pulling away the attention of people that you want watching these games, yet they're trying to focus on their teams, draft prospects and what they might ultimately be able to do. It's just, I feel like their calendar is just all out of whack, but that's another conversation for another day. Big trade happens on Father's Day, which was kind of a weird window and a weird time. Me being a Grizzlies fan, I wake up that morning and I see my phone, and I see the NBA alert. I didn't think it was us. Right? I thought it was Kevin Durant. I'm thinking that's the big domino that everybody's kind of waiting to see fall. And so I thought it was Kevin Durant. Honestly, one of my best friends is a Phoenix Suns fan, and he can't wait to offload Kevin Durant. And so I just thought that's what this was. So I opened it up, and my heart kind of sunk a little bit because I was talking to my buddy like 2 weeks ago, and I told him like big changes are coming to Memphis this offseason. And he was like, "Well, who's getting traded?" And I'm like, "Man, I think it's gonna be Dez." And that hurt me to say because he was the leader of this Grizzlies young core that we put together and we thought had a real shot at doing some damage and maybe even hoisting a Larry O'Brien trophy. When they put that nucleus together of Ja, Dez, and Trip, Dez was the final piece of that puzzle. Trip came in 2018, Ja came the following year in 19, and then Dez came in 2020. And when you put them all together, it felt like we had the makings of something big. Now, they whiffed on some first round picks. That one year where they went extremely young and took David Roddy and had, I think, 3 first round picks and Santi and Roddy and I don't think Santi was in that same draft, but it was David Roddy. It was we traded him to the Kings. I can't remember his name right now, but we that was the year we kind of messed up. We screwed the pooch that year, but um, we didn't do a good enough job of building around them. I mean, it felt like we had a really good roster, but the problem was, in hindsight and retrospect, it's easy to kind of look back and critique what was done. The biggest problem was we didn't have enough veterans around our young players. It's something that you don't really think about very often in the NBA because you see teams all the time win with um, these veteran rosters. And when you put together a young roster, you still need to you had to weave in those veterans to kind of steer those young players straight and to give them some sort of identity as to how you get it done at the most pivotal time of the year, which is the postseason. And we just lack that. We it's the blind leading the blind. We just got a young roster, and then the injuries started to take effect. Brandon Clark can never stay healthy. Jaws dealt with injury and then the suspensions, and then Tripp had his own set of issues. Even though he's been relatively healthy, he's had it. 2 years ago, everybody got hurt. Ja, Dez, and Tripp all got hurt, and then this offseason, Gigi got hurt, and then Vince Williams got hurt, and we just started off bad, and then it never really got back on track. Even though we started out the season well, and then the bottom fell out. You fire Taylor Jenkins, and you end up in the position that we ended up with. They brought our coach, interim coach, back, and he's going to be, the permanent head coach, and he's going to center the offense around Ja. And I think that's the right thing to do. But somebody had to go. When our general manager steps up to the podium after the season and says, that Oklahoma City series and everything that transpired towards the end of the season is proof that we're not close. We're not one player away. We're not one gritty vet away from putting us over the top, and that changes were going to come. And when he said that, I'm like, you're not trading Tripp and you're not trading Ja. Dez is the only guy that feels like he can be moved. Did I think we were going to get this type of haul for Desmond Bane? Absolutely not. But I think this is the beauty of what the Indiana Pacers are currently doing. and to a lesser degree, the Thunder, but this is more about Indiana. The East is wide open, and teams see an opportunity. Like there's no LeBron anymore in the East. There's no we don't have a shot because XYZ. The Celtics aren't going to be the Celtics this year because Jason Tatum is probably going to miss the entire season, more likely than not. They've got to blow up that rosters to a degree anyway because of the luxury tax. They're not going to pay the luxury tax knowing that Jason Tatum isn't going to be there this season, and you're in the second apron. You're not doing that if you're Boston. It's just not happening. So they're going to have to blow that roster up to a degree. And then who's afraid of the Cavs, right? They can win 80 games. Nobody cares because when it gets to the postseason, they're going to choke. That's what they do. So everyone's looking around at the East and saying, why not us? That's why the Knicks traded 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. That's why the Magic just traded 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane, because everybody sees a window of opportunity. The Magic are saying, we gave the Cavs a run, and they were the number 1 seed in the conference. We gave them a run in the first round, and if we could, play better down the stretch, we could shoot the ball better, which is what Desmond Bane is going to bring to their team. We have a shot to be right up there in the mix with the rest of the Eastern Conference. Why not us? And so that's what this kind of trade kind of, signifies, is that teams in the East feel like they got a shot and they're going for it. That's a pretty steep price to pay for a guy that's never been to an All-Star, even though I think the world of Desmond Bane. And, he's one of my favorite players in the league, obviously being a Grizzlies fan and watching him mature and grow, and then his leadership qualities. He's the kind of guy you want on your team. He plays championship caliber basketball. He brings that mentality. His game is one that you can win with. It just, for whatever reason, we couldn't put enough around, the group of guys we put together to get it done. There were some things, though, that worried me about Desmond Bane. He's had toe injuries. He's had back injuries. Those could linger. And he shoots on his toes. So I always feel like there's a chance that the toe injury could always resurface. And anytime somebody starts having back problems, I always get nervous. But I wish him nothing but the best. I'll be rooting for him in Orlando. But those 4 first-round picks and a pick swap in 2029, and they're all unprotected. I mean, we got so much optionality now. There's so many things we can do from a trade standpoint to bring in guys that we would not have had access to. Now, we didn't even have a first-round pick in this year's draft. Obviously, the Wizards, that pick went to the Wizards because of the way our season ended. And now we're back in the first round with the 16th pick. We're right outside of the lottery. Like, that's crazy. I haven't done any homework on any of the draft picks in this year's draft because I'm like, we don't got a first-round pick, so I don't care. Now we're in the draft. It's wild. I think Memphis is just getting started. And I think this is going to be a crazy offseason because teams see an opportunity to win a chip. There are no dominant teams in the NBA any longer, right? Like the Thunder have a chance to be really good, but you're not afraid of them. Like they're a good team, but you're not afraid of the Thunder. I think in both conferences, there's opportunities that exist, and you're going to see teams be aggressive in trying to attack the opportunity that exists now. There's no more Golden State. There's no more LeBron. There's no, big bad wolf that you've got to somehow get past to get where you want to go. It's as wide open as we've seen probably since the early 2000s when you had the Pistons and the Spurs and teams like that, vying for the championship. Because you've got to remember right after that little, period we had between Jordan and the Bulls, and then it was Kobe and the Lakers, right? For a little 4-year window or so from 2000 to maybe 2003, I guess. Because the Pistons put them out. And then there was a small window after the Pistons won, right there, where you could get it. And then after that, LeBron, about maybe 4 years later, LeBron establishes himself as the Don Dada in the East. And from that point on, it was LeBron you had to get through in the East. And then, the West was up for grabs. But then here came the Golden State, and it's really just been tough. It's open now. It's open. both sides. So I think that's the first of a few big trades you're going to see this offseason. As far as the finals are concerned, 2-2, very competitive series. I thought it would be this way. If you haven't had a chance to check out the first episode of the summer series, check it out. It's not. I knew it wasn't going to be for everyone. That one was more for me. I enjoyed that episode thoroughly. I'll do a reaction to that episode. I always do a reaction video to my summer series episode. So that'll be tomorrow. Tonight, I'm going to go lurking in the comment section live. So that's what we'll do tonight. And I know game 5 is tonight, so I won't keep you very long so you can focus most of your attention on the finals. But I will be live lurking in the comments tonight. But on that show with Robert Littell, we talked about the NBA Finals. The ratings are down. They're the lowest they've been since 1988. And it's a really good series. It's really good basketball. It's fun to watch, yet 2 small market teams. The NBA is doing a terrible job of promoting it. Like tonight, we just found out that for the first time in the series, they're going to show the starting lineups being introduced. Why haven't you been doing it the entire time? Like that's an easy home run slam dunk. Like one of the things we all remember as kids, if you're of a certain age, most of you're too young to remember the glory years of the NBA. But for us of a certain age, one of the best parts of me being a Bulls fan, more specifically a Scottie Pippen fan, but a Bulls fan in those days, there was nothing better than the introductions to the starting lineups before the game started. And they would always show that, right? NBC would always show that. And so if the road team, they do it quickly, but then the home team comes out. And I remember when the Bulls did it, man, it was the best, right? They play the music. Doom, 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 doom. And now, the starting lineup for your Chicago Bulls. And then he would go through his whole speech. And from North Carolina, that was the best, bro. When the Pistons were up, Chauncey Billups. Ben Wallace. That shit was fire. They don't even do it anymore. They don't put those things front and center. It's something as simple as that could be something that people want to show up to see. They're just doing a terrible. Now they want to show game 5 is the first time they're going to show the introductions to the starting lineup. Like the NBA is just so clueless, but it's wide open. And I said to you guys, I want to say Thursday was the last time we did a podcast episode. And I said, all Indiana needed to do, all they needed to do was win one of those 2 games at home. They didn't need to win both. If they wanted to win this series, they needed to win both. They had a shot. Okay. They took care of business in game 3, put themselves in a position where now they were playing with house money. Because if they won game 4 and went up 3-1, they were going to win this series. Now, you got to win a game on the road, which that's why they still have a shot, because Indiana has been the best road team in this postseason, right? Nobody's faced the obstacles. Oklahoma City may have just as good a road record as they do, but they didn't have to do it. They got theirs out the mud. Like Oklahoma City hasn't been on the road as many times. Trust me, because Indiana was not the home team in any of the series. They were not the team with home court advantage in any of the series that they've played in not a single one, right? They were the 5 seed in the first matchup against Milwaukee. They had to go on the road and beat Milwaukee twice. They were obviously the lower seeded team in the second round against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Went on the road and won both of the first 2 games, right? They did the same thing against the Knicks, right? Went on the road, won both of the first 2 games. They've been road warriors this entire time. And so went on the road and won game 1 against OKC. They've shown the ability to win on the road. They can do it again. This is a big one, right? Generally, when the series is tied, trust me, you're going to see this stat at least 50 times tonight. Generally, whoever wins game 5 in a series tied 2-2 usually goes on to win the series the vast majority of the time. I don't know if that rings true or not here. I expect Oklahoma City to win the series. That was my thought. Now, I thought they were going to win it in 5. Jay-Z put up, I think, $1 million on OKC to win in 5. Obviously, that didn't happen. I thought they were going to win in 5 too. So, I mean, I understood the bet that he was, trying to make and why he did it. But the Pacers have proven us wrong at every turn. And even if they lose tonight, I can see them going back home, winning game 6, and I could see them winning the game 7. I think this is a 7-game series, right? I see Oklahoma City taking care of business at home tonight. I see Indiana going back home in game 6 and taking care of business. And I see this thing going back to OKC for a 7th and final deciding game, right? And it has the makings of being a really, really great. What's the last time we had a 7-game NBA Finals series? We got to go back to that LeBron against the Warriors series. I mean, I'm trying to think. Have we had a 7-game series? How many games did the Heat and the Nuggets go? I don't think that went 7. I could be wrong. I just don't feel like we've had a 7-game series since LeBron and the Cavs beat the Warriors in 7 in that epic series. So with Kyrie hitting the shot and LeBron with the block, there may have been another one in there. Like, don't get me the line, So ultimately, this has a chance to do that. And I could see Indiana going on the road in a game 7 and winning. They're right where they need to be. They're right where they need to be. This is a big one. If they can steal this one, they got a chance to close it out in 6 at home. I don't think they win tonight. And then Oklahoma City obviously has a chance to close it out on the road. That's going to be a tough assignment. They're capable, but it feels like the rest of the way, the home team is going to win the games. But this is why I say Indiana has a shot, because they've proven that they can get it done on the road. So I would not count this scrappy Indiana Pacers team out at all. Should be a fun final 3 games of that series. Should it go 7? If not, the next 2 games are definitely going to be entertaining. I could see OKC winning both of them. I just don't. I just think they're going to win tonight, are the Thunder. The Pacers are going to win game 6. It's going to go to game 7, and Oklahoma City is going to win that game and win their first NBA championship. So anyway, I digress. Let's get to some NFL talk, shall we? That's probably why most of you are here. So let's do that. Let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? Yeah, I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So the Cincinnati Bengals are now once again the Cincinnati Bungles. And it may be, a bit over the top. Like, they still got Joe Burrow. And that just so you know, as a Commanders fan, you know what Cincinnati feels like to me? They feel like, to me, what we would have been had Dan Snyder still owned the team, but you drafted Jaden Daniels, and somehow we were able to get a good coach in here, which I don't know. And I don't necessarily consider their coach to be a great coach by any stretch of the imagination, but they did get to a Super Bowl, right? So you got to give him some sort of credit for that. But they're still a dysfunctional organization. They still operate as a poverty franchise. The only thing stopping them from truly being the Bungles once again is Joe Burrow's presence. Like, this is what we talk about when we say a franchise quarterback, like one of them ones. It's got to be one of them ones. It can't just be a franchise quarterback, right? Like, Kirk Cousins was the franchise quarterback in the league for many years. He wasn't changing the prospects of your organization, but he's a franchise quarterback. You could win a lot of football games with him. And if you put the right team around him, you could win and do some serious damage. Brock Purdy is a franchise quarterback. By no means is Brock Purdy a franchise changer, right? But you can win games. We've seen that with the 49ers. You put the right team around him, the right supporting cast, you insulate him, you don't force him to have to go out and win you football games. You can win a lot of games. He's been to the Super Bowl. All right, he's been to the Super Bowl. So, again, you can see how this works, but you need one of them ones if you want to turn an entire franchise around and take it from dysfunctional to not just functional, but championship level. And that's what Peyton Manning did for Indianapolis, right? The Colts were a bottom feeding organization. They weren't even in the top 3 of most important franchises, sports franchises in the state when Peyton Manning was drafted number 1 overall back in 1990, what was it, 7 or 8, and turned everything around for them, right? I think he was drafted number 1 overall in 90s. I want to say it was 98. So, that's what it's going to take, right? You need one of those type of quarterbacks. It took Kurt Warner, the combination of Kurt Warner, who really started it off for them, and it took Carson Palmer to turn the Arizona Cardinals around from laughingstock of the NFL to a legitimate NFL Super Bowl contender, right? Made it to the Super Bowl 1 year, lost in an epic thriller against the Steelers. Made it to the NFC Championship game in 2015 with Carson Palmer, got blown out by the Carolina Panthers, right? The Cardinals couldn't even dream of being in that situation before there was Kurt Warner, right? A guy that could come in and change, a future Hall of Fame quarterback that could come in and change the prospects of your organization and turn it around. That's what the Bengals had to have in order to turn their organization, because they're so poorly run, right? They're stuck in 1965. They do things in a manner that it doesn't lend itself to people being happy nor wanting to be there, right? It's not a great place to work. It's an organization that's a nickel and dime franchise. They don't spend a ton of money. They were known for being and notorious for being frugal for a very long time. They just started spending money. They still don't like to spend money, right? We saw it with the T. Higgins situation. You know, they had a gun to their head with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, so they had to do those deals. They penny pinch, they cut corners. Again, they're one of those franchises that they're so stuck in their ways and stubborn that they can't get out of their own way. You know, they do a lot of things that are counterproductive to winning. And I think last season was a microcosm of why the Bengals are the Bungles again, to me. So the Jamar Chase situation was so sloppily handled last offseason. He thought he was getting money and a new deal. They had other ideas. This was not communicated to him. Clearly, he thought he was getting a deal. And the entire time, there was like, I don't know where you got your information from, but we ain't got no deal for you right now. You're going to play this season out, and if it goes well, we'll get you a deal next year. Well, that wasn't communicated to him until right before the season started. And he was like, well, there was a miscommunication because I thought I was getting a deal. And they were like, well, again, I don't know who told you that, but you ain't getting shit. And so he held out up until the week of their first game for an organization that is notorious for slow starts. The last thing you need is a distraction heading into your week 1 contest. There were questions as to whether Jamar Chase was going to even play in the week 1 game. And we all knew he had no leverage. He was going to play. But the fact that we were even having those conversations heading into the week of practice, Jamar Chase was like, I don't know. I'll see if I'm going to play. Like, this is some bullshit. And of course, you lose to one of the worst teams in the league at home in week 1. The Patriots didn't win another game for like 10 weeks. I mean, that is insanity. And then you look back at their season, they missed the playoffs by a game, and you say, you lost to the New England Patriots in week 1 at home. Why? Because you're a poorly run franchise. That's why. These things add up. These things add up. So then you fast forward to, and we saw the defense just deteriorate into next to nothing last year. It's just a mess of a defensive performance. They fire Louie Anarumo. He immediately gets a job in Indianapolis as their defensive coordinator because he's a good coach. And Joe Burrow tries to put that team on his back because that's what one of them ones do, right? Puts you in a position when you have no business being there, but puts you in a position because Burrow won't let that organization sink to the depths that it probably should be at because he's one of them ones. That's what's keeping them afloat right now. That's the reason why they're not the Bungles. Totally. Like, figuratively, they're the Bungles again. With the decisions that they make, with how they go about conducting business, they're still the Bungles. But literally, they're not because of Joe Burrow. Case in point, you fast forward this offseason, Burrow goes on a world tour. Like, I need my guys. I need Jamar to get his deal. And they still hadn't paid Jamar Chase yet, which we knew was going to happen, but they hadn't paid him yet. And he's like, I need T. Higgins as well. I need my guys. And the Bengals really didn't want to pay both of them. They didn't. But Joe said, I'm saving your ass right now. If not for me, you ain't shit. So I don't ask for much, but I do need my guys. Make it happen. So they had to make it happen. Took a while, right? A lot longer than it should have, but they got it done. Meanwhile, Trey Hendrickson, who wanted a deal last offseason along with Jamar Chase, last offseason along with T. Higgins, last offseason, who all wanted deals, none of which happened. If they could have gotten one of them done last year, you wouldn't have been in a position this year where all three of those guys are still looking for a deal. You could have got one of them done last year, and then you could have used a franchise tag on another guy to, save yourself the trouble and put yourself in a position, because Jamar Chase still had another year, so you were good. You used the franchise tag on T. Higgins, and Trey Hendrickson still has a year, so you were still good. Like, you weren't in a position to lose any of those guys, but you could have given an extension out to one of them so that it would have lessened all that needed to be done. And oh, by the way, if you get a deal done early, it's cheaper. I still just don't understand, like, how teams don't understand the concept of doing a deal early saves you money. You knew you were going to re-sign Jamar Chase. Maybe T. Higgins you weren't sure about. You needed to see him stay healthy, XYZ, because he had, dealt with some injuries over the last couple of years. Maybe you just needed to see it from him. Okay, but Jamar Chase was getting a deal. Why you don't get that done last year behooves me, because the receiver money is going to continue to go up. Had you gotten his deal done before Justin Jefferson's, it would have been a lot cheaper. A lot cheaper. But you waited. Now he's getting an astronomical amount of money. He was going to get a lot anyway, but you could have saved yourself probably upwards of $20 million to $25 million had you gotten the deal done last year. But that, again, these teams, I'll never understand. I'll never understand. Why it is they operate in this space of, I'm not going to do stuff until I have to do it. I just don't understand that. But again, here we are, right? So he gets the massive deal. Higgins gets, I think he would have gotten way more on the open market, but he never got a chance to. And he didn't want to leave. He wanted to be in Cincinnati. So they were able to get that done, right? They used the franchise tag to their advantage. They really abused it and manipulated it beautifully, to be honest with you, because T. Higgins didn't make a ton of money last year on the franchise tag. This year, he was slated to make less money than he ultimately got in the extension, And it still wasn't going to be like this inordinate amount. So they knew they had that leverage and they used it beautifully. And so it put them in a position where we could get a deal done with him. And they did. And then there's Trey Hendrickson. And you're like, okay, they're going to get Trey done too, right? Because they had everybody in line. There was a pecking order. Jamar has first, T second, and then Trey's third. And Trey was like, I'm cool with that. As long as you get around to me, as long as there's communication, I'm cool. They just cut that man off. Left that man on red and ghosted him. And he got this man showing up at OTAs in a whole golf polo setup where he's about to go, swing the clubs and shoot a good 18 holes. But I just need y'all to know that they shitting on me right now, and I'm not happy. But yeah, I'm about to go hit the links, man. I'll catch up with y'all later, right? So he does his whole little spiel about how, he feels disrespected. He wants to be here. My wife works in the hospital here, and we put roots down here. This is our home, but there's no communication, and this is not how a healthy relationship is supposed to be conducted. Even if they had just said, hey, we're going to put you in the queue, we're going to take care of Jamar, we're going to take care of T, and then we're going to circle back to you. That's all I needed to hear. I ain't heard nothing. Typical Cincinnati Bengals dealings, right? So that situation was put on hold. Eventually, I figured they'd get around to him. Then you look at the Jermaine Pratt situation, that was some nasty work. But that's not a Cincinnati Bengals exclusive that happened there. That's an NFL thing where you wait to see what you get in the draft. Because in a sense, I like the way the NFL does it. That free agency comes first, and then that tells you what you need in the draft. The NBA does it the opposite way. The draft is first, and then free agency takes place. So it works vice versa, where you get what you need in the draft, and then maybe you don't necessarily need it in free agency. A little bit different in the NBA because unlike the NFL, where your draft picks are expected to come in and contribute right away, in the NBA, most times your rookies aren't coming in, not on good teams at least, aren't coming in and contributing right away. They're either going to the G League or they're getting sparse minutes on the bench. They're not really going to be guys you're heavily going to be relying upon, right? So it's a little bit different. But if it were the other way around in the NFL, where the draft came first, maybe situations like the Jermaine Pratt situation wouldn't happen, and he would be able to be released in a timely manner where he could still go out there and maximize his situation. But we see this often in the NFL where there's a guy that's on the roster that they may be looking to move on from, but they can't quite cut him, at the start of free agency because they don't know what they're going to get in the draft. So you have to hold on to the guy first to make sure that you secure that position in the draft and you're comfortable with what you've selected, and then you can release said player. None of that is out of the ordinary. Cincinnati held on to Jermaine Pratt. Jermaine Pratt, they pretty much told him, we're going to replace you. And he could see the writing on the wall, and so he demanded a trade. This is how petty they are. He demanded a trade. Did Jermaine Pratt, because he could see the writing on the wall. If y'all not going to release me, trade me, please. Give me a chance. They said, oh, you want to get loud? You want to take shit to the media? You know we don't respect that. All right, bet I got your ass. Don't worry about it. So they draft Demetrius Knight in the second round. Great pick. Cheap labor puts them in a position where they no longer need Jermaine Pratt. Pair him up with Logan Wilson. They feel good about their linebacker position. They could have just cut Jermaine Pratt right then and there, right? That's a day 2 transaction in the draft. They could release Jermaine Pratt, and there's still some money out there to be had. Let him go get his deal from somebody. Nah. They hold on to Jermaine Pratt, and they don't cut him until last week. We're talking June, folks. Again, this wasn't a post-June 1 designation, and even if it was, they could have made that distinction when they released him and let him find work elsewhere. Again, there's still money out there to be had. Let him go get it. Instead, they wanted to be petty. They held on to him until June, and then they cut him when most of the money's dried up. And I knew somebody was going to sign him. He's a good linebacker. He was their leading tackler last season and has been one of their leading tacklers and one of their captains on the team for the last 3 or 4 years. So somebody was going to sign him up, and the Raiders did. But I said, I bet you he doesn't get the money that he was slated to make this season, which he was slated to make $5.5 million base salary. And he signed a $4.5 million deal, if you guys weren't paying attention, with the Raiders, which isn't that far away. And maybe with some incentives, he could get up to what he was supposed to make, but it's still bullshit, right? But that's the Cincinnati Bengal way. But I also thought, I said, okay, you're freeing up some space here by getting rid of Jermaine Pratt. Now you got cheap labor in the second round with Demetrius Knight. And maybe you can get the Trey Hendrickson deal done. And we just found out yesterday that talks have been reignited with Cincinnati and Trey Hendrickson. So maybe something gets done then. Like all of this hoopla, all of this back and forth, all of this stuff transpired when they could have just communicated with this man, right? And told him what their intentions were. And something still may not get done, right? They could reignite the talks only to have them extinguished quickly when they see what Trey Hendrickson is looking for, and they're like, no, we're not paying you that. Here's what we're willing to do. And Trey Hendrickson could laugh at it and say, come on, man, that's disrespectful. And they could say, take it or leave it, because that's the Cincinnati Bengal way. Then there's the case of Shamar Stewart. And we could even go back to when he and Demetrius Knight were both selected. The first rookie mini hits, right, or the rookie mini hits, neither have a contract and neither decide to practice. And it's just like, Cincinnati, what are you doing? Like, if these guys don't want to practice, because if I'm an NFL player, I get that. If I'm a rookie, I get it. It's not what rookies typically do in the league. You know, there are waivers that are, signed, that are produced by the team, that if something were to occur before you sign on the dotted line, there's like an insurance policy there, but it's not going to be the amount of your contract. So you're taking a risk by going out there, but rarely do we see anything happen like at these rookie mini camps where someone gets injured before they've signed a deal. But every now and again you get guys that are like, nah, I'm not doing it. But it's very rare, right? Because you literally get drafted and then the following week you've got a rookie mini camp. Rarely are the contracts done by then. But we know that these are slotted. You know where you're supposed to be. You know how much you're supposed to be paying. Then there's just a matter of language. And if that's the holdup, then you're probably doing something wrong or sneaky on your end as the team, because these deals get done quickly all the time, right? So Demetrius Knight was like, I'm not practicing. And Shamar Stewart was like, I'm not practicing. Only team in the league to have multiple guys not practicing at rookie minis. That's the Cincinnati, the Bungle way, right? That's the Cincinnati Bungle way, right? So they don't practice initially. Then he gets his deal. Demetrius Knight gets his deal. So he's practicing, he's good, but Shamar Stewart doesn't. And you're looking around and you're saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so I'm thinking offset language. We've seen this before. They'll fix it. They'll get it done. Nothing to see here, right? I mean, we see guys all the time. Like, we still have teams that haven't signed their first round. Like, Jacksonville hasn't signed their first round pick, right? Travis Hunter still hasn't signed his deal yet. The Broncos have not signed their first round pick, right? Jahdae Barron. And then you have Shamar Stewart. Those are the 3 first round picks that still have not signed their first round contract. So it's not like the Bengals are alone here, right? And again, we know what the money looks like for the number 2 pick, which is what Travis Hunter is. We know what that looks like. We know what the money is supposed to look like for Jahdae Barron, wherever the Broncos are selected this year. We know what that slot is. So it's just language. But in the Bengals case, now they said this, and I think we've confirmed that 2 teams around them, I think the Bengals had the 15th pick, the team with the 16th pick and the team with the 14th pick. I think it was like Seattle and another team. I don't remember the exact order of the draft. But those teams have similar language. I think it was the Cardinals, right? With Walter Nolan, and I think it was the Seahawks with their pick. Um, have similar language. I want to say their pick was Gray Zabel, I think. I could be wrong. But they have similar language in their deals with their draft picks. So apparently, in this Shamar Stewart contract, there is a clause in there that if, and I forget the exact word. The word, it's a word where if anything happens, essentially, they could void the guarantees for the rest of his contract, which is just insanity. Like, normally, if something goes awry in that season, you can void the guarantees for that particular year, right? So, for instance, let's say Shamar Stewart gets popped for PEDs in his second year, right? And he gets suspended for 6 games, 8 games. They could void his guarantees for that second year of his rookie deal. What the Bengals are effectively trying to do with the language is if he gets popped for PEDs or he gets suspended for something, or something goes amiss with him on the field, or they decide, you know what, he's not very good and we want to cut ties with him, they want to void the rest of the guarantees in his entire contract. So if he gets into trouble in year 2, they want to void not only the guarantees for year 2, which is the standard in the contract, which you wouldn't get your money, your guarantees for that year, but you would be back on the hook as the team in year 3 and 4, and if you pick up the 5th year option, year 5. They want to be able to void the remainder of the contract, all the guarantees. So I'm out on year 2, I'm out on year 3, year 4, and obviously I'm not picking up the year 5, 5th team option, right? So he's like, no, I'm not signing that. That's crazy. I'm not allowing you to void my guarantees for the remainder of my contract, because as we know, sometimes you miss on a first round pick and you get into year 3 and you're like, you know what? I'm good. After the 3rd year, you just cut him, right? You can't find anybody to trade him to. You just cut him. Like the Commanders just did with Emmanuel Forbes. They just cut him after 2 years. After 1 year, they cut him. Now they still got to pay him his guarantees, right? Even though he's not on the roster, they still have to pay him his guarantees for the following, for this upcoming year and next year, because he had a 4-year contract with a 5th year option, a team option. So they still have to pay him his guarantees, right? Whereas in this contract that the Bengals are putting forth here with Shamar Stewart, after they cut him, they don't have to pay him anything. And Shamar Stewart's like, no, I'm not doing that. I need my money. I don't blame him, by the way. And his stance is, he said, they've never done this in their team's history before. They've never done it. They've never done it before. So I'm not going to be the guinea pig. I'm not going to be. And the beauty here is, it's rare to say this, but the Bengals don't have it's rare to say in the NFL that the organization doesn't have the leverage, because they usually have the leverage. And if there are 10 situations that occur in the NFL, 9 of them, if not all 10, are with the organization having the balance of the power. As a player, you don't have, and they set it up that way, obviously. You don't have a lot of leverage if you're under contract. He's not under contract. So he holds all the cards. So if the Bengals want Shamar Stewart, who they desperately need on defense, they stink on defense, which is why you're like, you got Trey Hendrickson over here trying to get his money. You drafted a guy in the first round. Why? Because you suck on defense, and he hasn't practiced once. Now it's OTAs. It's mandatory minis. It's not a big deal. As long as he's out there for training camp, you're fine. But the fact that we're having this conversation about one of the worst defense in football last year, and you don't have 2 of your defenders that you have to even have a chance to be solid on defense, is asinine, because you want to roll out something you've never done in franchise history before, and you won't relent. And clearly he's not going to sign a contract. And he's right. He is 100% correct. He said, I'm 100% in the right here. They're not interested in winning. They're interested in being right. And this is a fight that they can't win. It's actually beautiful to watch, because Shamar Stewart, for as much as I didn't want him on my team as a prospect, this is smart on his behalf, on his part, to say no and stand up to them and say, no, I'm not doing that. It feels like only a select handful of organizations could find themselves in such a quandary like this, where a guy who hasn't set foot on the field for your organization one time is already shitting on the organization. Did you see the press conference with their head coach? Did you see the press conference when they asked him about the Shamar Stewart situation? And he said, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, that, hey, Shamar's doing what he needs to do. He didn't toe the company line. He didn't shit on his organization, right? He didn't shit on his organization. Zach Taylor is a smart guy. He didn't shit on his organization, but he didn't say that Shamar Stewart was wrong. He didn't say he was wrong. He was like, and in his mind, he knows the organization they bullshitting here. They trying to get over on the young fella, and he ain't having this shit. And he's already got the support of the veterans in the locker room. Like, yeah, because you got to remember, it's the players against the organization in situations like this. Because if you allow them to do this, you set precedents. Now it becomes okay for teams to want to do this. So the players are like, nah, bro, stand on business. Because not only are you doing this for yourself, you're doing this for future players that come in the league that they're going to try to get to sign this bullshit. Don't sign it. So he's got the support of the veterans in the locker room. His head coach is like, hey, Shamar doing what he got to do, man. And he's doing the right thing. He didn't say that, but his mannerisms and the way he delivered that message was like, nah, Shamar doing the right thing. And we support him. And the beauty is the Bengals are going to have to relent. They're going to have to give in on this one, which they don't do. When they dig their heels in, I've always said the Bengals are the equivalent of the state of Florida. The state of Florida, they're their own country. I don't claim the state of Florida as a member of the United States of America. Florida is its own country. They have their own laws. They conduct business on their own terms. I don't claim them as a member of the 50 states in the United States of America. I don't claim them. Or however many states we have now. Whatever that count is. Last time I checked, it was 50. Shame on me, right? I don't claim Florida. And Cincinnati is very similar. Like, they march to the beat of their own drum in the NFL. They conduct business on their own terms. And you got to remember, all 32 teams, they act as independent owners. They come together to create the National Football League, but they're 32 independently run organizations. They just happen to run there so far from the mean, right? They run their business so far, they regress so far away from the mean, from what everybody else is doing, that they just feel like an outlier. And this is yet another step in the Bengals showing that they're the Bungles still. And the crazy part is, at some point, they have to give in and change the language. And if they don't, guess what Shamar Stewart can do? He can not sign the contract, right? He can opt to not sign with Cincinnati and re-enter the 2026 draft. Nobody wants to see that happen. The Bengals can't afford for that to happen. Shamar Stewart doesn't want to forfeit the ability to earn money this year, but he's not going to sign that deal. And I don't blame him, and no one else does. And if it gets to the point where he's like, you know what, I'll just enter the draft next year, the Bengals are screwed. They're not going to allow that to happen, obviously, because they're going to have to change the language. But what are we doing here? Like, okay, you tried. It didn't work. Let's move on. All right. Let's change the language. Let's get him in here and let's go to work. You wasting time, and you think he's just going to wake up tomorrow and say, you know what? They're right. I should just sign this deal so I can join my teammates. Bullshit. We'll get to July, 23rd or whenever the Bengals start their training camp, and that shit isn't done. Now it's an even bigger distraction. And they don't seem to care about distractions for some reason in Cincinnati. They're okay with distractions. The T. Higgins distraction a couple of years ago, which wasn't as bad, right? But the Jamar Chase one last year was ridiculous, right? And Trey Hendrickson on top of that last year because he wanted to be traded as well. And then you fast forward this year, Trey Hendrickson again, now Shamar Stewart. It's always something with this Bengals organization. It's always something. Anyway, I digress. The Bengals are the Bungles. And it's unfortunate that this is who they are. And if not for Joe Burrow, they'd be one of the worst franchises in the league. They'd be one of the worst franchises in the league. So let's see where this thing goes. I think Trey Hendrickson is going to get a deal of some sort. I hope they do right by him and give him, a brand new extension here and put him where he needs to be. Because it suck if he doesn't get the deal. He's getting older. It's less likely that he'll get a deal. Like, it needs to happen this offseason. It really does. So we'll see if they do right by Trey Hendrickson. I don't put anything past this Cincinnati Bengals organization. Like I said, they're one of the worst in the league. Not for Joe Burrow. I don't know where they'd be right now. Let's go to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. Shout out to everybody in the comment section holding the kid down. If you're out there, you want your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. And go ahead and super chat if you want to ensure that your comment is read on the air. So with that said, let's jump into the comment section. But I want to start off the conversation with a conversation around the worst quarterback rooms in the NFL heading into training camp. So I think there are a few choices. They're not many. Like, there are some rooms that I'm not necessarily fond of, but you can't consider it the worst. The Steelers quarterback room isn't great, but with Aaron Rodgers there, it'll suffice. But if anything happens to Aaron Rodgers, the Steelers are screwed, right? It's not an ideal situation. Like Mason Rudolph and the rookie from Ohio State, it's not a great situation, to be in there. I don't necessarily love Seattle's quarterback room. Sam Darnold, I don't trust him. Drew Lock, I think he might have played some of his best ball in Seattle a couple of years ago, goes to New York and looks like the Drew Lock that we, come to know and love in Denver that was hit or miss and very inconsistent. So now he goes back to Seattle, and I'm just like, don't really know how I feel about that. And then I'm not the biggest Jalen Milroe fan. So there's that. So I don't love Cincinnati. I don't love Seattle's quarterback room, but it's not the worst, right? It's not the worst. Here are some teams that I think are in that conversation, however. The Indianapolis Colts. If we're choosing between Anthony Richardson, who, man, I think sometimes these quarterbacks that have this, massive frame, 240 pounds, they think they're indestructible. I think you're more likely, like, it's funny because you see an Anthony Richardson and you're like, yeah, he's got the frame, this, that, and the third. Ben Roethlisberger was another one. Drew Bledsoe was another one. These big physical quarterbacks. Josh Allen is another one. even though he's been able to stay relatively healthy, but he's, always dealing with some knick-knack injuries, but he stays out there, right? But, these guys with that frame where they feel like um, that they're indestructible. And so he was one of those guys running dudes over, lowering his shoulder, and I'm like, that's not going to fly in the NFL. I think he starts his first 5 games and actually started off really well in his rookie season, gets injured, misses the whole season, right? The rest of the season. So the Colts fans are excited for year 2 because of the small sample size they got in his rookie season and how well he was playing. And then the same thing happens in his second year. Gets injured, trying to run over defenders. This is not college. And he was super inconsistent. He checked himself out of a game last year because he was winded, which this is not college football. This isn't high school. You can't do that. So it was a mess for him last year. He got benched at one point. And he's dealing with some off-season shoulder concerns now. I think he had some soreness, and I think he's being evaluated now. So that's a situation to watch. I guess this is why you brought Daniel Jones in, but if I'm a Colts fan, that doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. But between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones as your 2 quarterbacks, it leaves a lot to be desired, does that Colts quarterback room. So obviously they're in this mix. I think another team that you have to consider are the Browns. Now, at least there are some young guys there with some upside that get you, excited, maybe a little bit intrigued by. You know what I've heard? What's very interesting, and tell me if you've heard this too. I've heard that the Browns are really smitten with what they've gotten out of Shador Sanders, and we kind of knew that he'd be the best of that bunch eventually. Don't know how fast that's going to occur, but they also took the quarterback out of Oregon, who's a left-hander. His name escapes me at the moment. It'll come to me. Dillon Gabriel, right? They took Dillon Gabriel. And I'm hearing that if he performs well this offseason and training camp, preseason, etc., that they could look to move him to Miami, which would make a ton of sense. He's literally Tua Tagovailoa is Dillon Gabriel. Soft tossing lefty, and I think his arm's stronger than Tua's, by the way, but kind of a soft tossing lefty with extreme accuracy, short to intermediate. A lot of his success is based off of, rhythm and timing, just like Tua. And so you don't have to change your offense because he's left-handed just like Tua is. And so I've been hearing that could be something that the Dolphins may look to explore. And it makes sense because their quarterback situation isn't great if Tua goes down. We saw that last year firsthand. So that's something to keep an eye on. But it feels like Shador might be the guy there. There's just so much stuff there. They traded for Kenny Pickett. You drafted 2 quarterbacks, Dillon Gabriel, Shador Sanders, and Joe Flacco is there. And you still have Deshaun Watson on the mend. He won't be ready this season, obviously. But there's a lot going on in that quarterback room. But the quarterback room right now that feels the worst. And again, the Colts are giving them a strong run for their money with Daniel Jones, but it's the New Orleans Saints. I mean, if you're a Saints fan, ouch right now. Ouch. You've got Jay Kaner, who stinks. You've got a guy that I like, and I wouldn't mind seeing him in year 2, new system, and Spencer Rattler, who I think has a ton of talent, but didn't go well for him necessarily last year. He had his moments. And then they drafted Tyler Shuck this year out of Louisville. That's your quarterback room. And they're going to legitimately, I think of all the teams this offseason, they have the most legitimate quarterback competition. Like they have no idea who's going to be their starting quarterback. None. We'll see. I think Spencer Rattler's your week 1 starter just because of his experience. And I say that loosely because he's going into his second year, but Haener stinks. And I think Tyler Shuck he's older, obviously, played a lot of football. So that might help him in the experience category or lack thereof at the NFL level, but he still played a lot of football. But I just think the adjustment to the NFL, the speed of the game, etc. Rattler has the leg up there, and I think may ultimately give him a chance to win that battle. Maybe Cleveland has a battle. I don't really know what they're going to do with quarterback, so that's another one to keep an eye on. But that Saints quarterback room is a mess. That's nasty. So it was a mess. And to see that situation deteriorate as fast as it did with Derek Carr retiring and kind of putting them in a tough spot. Ouch. And like I said, this is the time of year where fans get to be excited. Fans get to be optimistic, right? And there's just none of that for the Saints. I mean, I don't know how you can be. I mean, I can't tell them how to feel, obviously. They can feel how they want to feel. I mean, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to get excited about Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, and Jake Haener at quarterback. Like, how do you? I mean, now it's not a great division. It's not a great division, so you just never know, right? You just never know what's going to happen. But it's not a great division by any stretch. But that's not a good quarterback room, and that's not a great Saints roster either. Like I don't know if they have enough talent around those guys to offset the fact that they're not very good. You know what I mean? So it's between them and the Colts, if you ask me. It's between them and the Colts. I'm gonna say I got to give it to the Saints. So we'll see. There's some nasty rooms out there, but I think the Saints have the Colts by this much. By this much. What says you? Leave it down in the comment section. Let's get to the comment section and see what you guys are talking about. If there's anything addressed to me. John Wynn says, you don't have to worry about seeing my old quarterback, Sam Howell, playing Seattle uniform again. Yeah, they traded him to Minnesota. He's in a really good spot. I'll just say that. He's with the quarterback whisperer. He'll have a shot to be successful. If he gets a chance to play, obviously. J.J. McCarthy's out there. We'll see what that whole quarterback room materializes into and what it looks like. But I like Sam Howell in Minnesota because he can play. I'm not backing off of that. Sam Howell can play. Sheree says prime Cam or prime Russell Wilson. I'm going to go with prime Cam, and he just can do so much more, and he could carry a team. Russ felt like a guy that was, I don't want to say a manager, because Russ could do some damage too. and Russ could be dynamic and he could use it, but Cam was next level. Prime Cam won an MVP and took the Panthers to a 15-1 regular season record and steamrolled its way through the playoffs and then ran into a defensive buzzsaw in the Denver Broncos. But that was Prime Cam, MVP. Prime Russell Wilson has never even come remotely close to winning league MVP. Not even close. So now won a Super Bowl, better roster, obviously, better roster around him. But should have won another one. Obviously, all he had to do was run the football, but give me Prime Cam. Yeah, give me Prime Cam. Sheree says, wanted to ask as a Falcons fan if you felt like this Falcons-Saints rivalry during the Ryan Brees era was the most underrated in the NFL. I guess it was, I don't want to say most underrated. It was definitely underrated. I don't think enough, like the people in those cities respected it. My wife, for a stretch there, lived in Atlanta, and she said their biggest rival was the Saints. It wasn't Carolina, it wasn't Tampa Bay. That's the game that would get hyped up for, was the Saints. So obviously that was a big rivalry. Those were two of the better quarterbacks in that era, but neither were ever the best. And those two teams were never great at the same time, it felt like. There were years where the New Orleans Saints were really good, Super Bowl, contenders, but the Falcons wouldn't be that same year, it felt like. And vice versa. 2016, the Falcons were the best team in the NFC, but the Saints weren't, right? Then you had the penalty game against the Rams. What year was that? 2018, I believe. Playoffs. 2018 when they lost to the Patriots. So yeah, it felt like they were never good together to make it a rivalry that you had to pay attention to. There were some good, games in season, but what drives a rivalry too is those teams have to meet in the postseason. And I can't recall, and I'm not saying it never happened. I just can't recall the Falcons and Saints during that span of Breeze and Ryan. And you said it was 2008 to 2019. I can't recall those two teams meeting in the postseason. I remember the Panthers playing the Saints in the playoffs a bunch of times, at least twice in Cam's career. I remember that happening. I don't remember, and it's tough because it's two teams in the same division, but that's where rivalries really get their traction, is in the postseason. Like, you can play a team a bunch in the regular season, but the reason why Buffalo and Kansas City became a thing is because of what happened in the playoffs. The reason why Cincinnati and Kansas City became a thing, yeah, Joe Burrow was perfect against Patrick Mahomes, the only team that they couldn't beat, but it was because they beat him in the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl in 2021, right? That's when it became a real rivalry. Like, oh my God, we got to get these boys, right? It's the same thing with Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, right? It's the reason why that's a rivalry is because they can't get past the Chiefs, no matter what, in the playoffs. They can't get past the Chiefs. So it's a rivalry now. Those are great regular season games. Week 1 last year was an epic classic, right? With Isaiah Likely's toe out of bounds. Like, that was a classic. But it's what happens in the postseason that really forges a legacy of a rivalry. Brady and Manning, right? We could talk till our face turns blue about Brady Manning in the regular season, and they had some great games. The game where Belichick, faked a 4th and 1 or whatever. It was one of the worst fake, punts or whatever we've ever seen. Like, there were some games, but it's the postseason affairs that really forged that rivalry, if that makes sense. You go all the way back to the 90s, same thing, right? We could talk about Young and Aikman and Favre and all of the regular season battles. Nobody talks about those games. It's the games in the postseason It's that mud fest from 93 with the Cowboys going on the road and beating the 49ers in their building in that wet, nasty, muddy field at Candlestick Park. That was a classic. That's what you think of when you think of that rivalry. When Steve Young's talking about get that monkey off my back, right? It's because of what happened in the postseason. That's why that one didn't get. And again, they may have played in the postseason. I just my memory doesn't recall a Falcons Saints playoff game. So I digress. But it was an underrated rivalry, I think. Ghost Rider says, is the Bengals owner the new Dan Snyder? No, because he's not a criminal, right? He's not a bad dude. He's just frugal and he's stubborn. There's nothing wrong with that until it is something wrong with that. But that's who they've always been. They're not the new Dan Snyder. Dan Snyder was a bad human being. I never, ever want to, from an owner standpoint, this is who the Bengals have always been. This is who they've always been. Right? Nothing's changed. This is who they've been. But they're not bad people. That's the difference. And Dan Snyder was not a good human being. So there's levels to this. Sheree says, is there a sport where home field advantage matters more than it does in football? No. It feels like home field advantage carries a lot more weight in football than it does in any other sport. I feel like basketball, home court advantage helps, but you could easily lose on the road. And like you rarely, it's not rare in the NFL, but generally speaking, there's a reason why the number one seed often makes it to the Super Bowl. One, they got to play one less game, and two, they got home field advantage, and it's just tough to go into somebody's building and win. So you often see the one seed. Now, it's not a guarantee, right? The AFC last year, I think both one seeds made it to the Super Bowl, but the year before, the Chiefs were the 3 seed, and they had to go on the road to Buffalo, who were the 2 seed, and they had to go on the road to the number 1 seed, the Ravens, and they won, right? But when the Chiefs have the 1 seed, they usually win. Arrowhead's a tough place to go in there and win. Eagles, again, I've talked about this. When they play at home, they're tough to beat. They haven't lost in the Jalen Hurts era. They have not lost a home playoff game. Get them on the road, different story. But you got to play them at the link. Good luck. It really matters. It does absolutely matter. Basketball, it helps, especially when you get on a run and the crowd gets involved and, it's an avalanche, it feels like, and the crowd's right there on you. It can definitely sway a game. But baseball, it doesn't matter. Hockey, it doesn't matter. And to a degree, basketball, it matters. But football is nothing like football because it's just one game. One game. You don't have to win a series. It's just one game. And having one game at home definitely matters. Uh-oh. I don't know who this D.E. Elliott clown is, but look it up. If you're a Bengals fan and you're trying to tell me that Demetrius Knight was at every day of rookie minicamp, you're a clown, right? He hasn't missed any of the OTAs, but he missed rookie minicamp at the beginning. I know because I was following the situation. See if there are any more. Comments here. Let's see. I digress. All right, so nothing else for me there. So let's get to our final segment of the show. And garbage time. So we've now officially hit the dead period of the offseason where there's nothing going on. The lights are out at most NFL facilities right now. This is the time for staff members and players to decompress and get one final break before the madness ensues. What we as fans should be really locking into right now is contracts now for guys like Trey Hendrickson, Terry McLaurin, TJ Watt, several others, right, that want to be paid, that haven't been paid, that sat out of their team's mandatory mini camps and are looking for resolution. Shamar Stewart situation in Cincinnati, along with Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, I just mentioned Terry McLaurin. Jalen Ramsey's situation still has no resolution in Miami. These are the things that we should now be turning our attention to, being that we've hit this dead period. Again, I don't assume that anything's going to transpire with any of those gentlemen in June. As we get to July, that's when you'll see all of this stuff start to really heat up. Like the TJ Watt one is interesting because Mike Tomlin was, and he's supposed to be. I mean, what is he going to say? No, we're going to get TJ Watt in here. He's like, both sides want to get something done. We think it's going to get done, but I can't tell you that it's going to get done. That's crazy to me, but it's posturing. It'll get done, right? He's going to be a Pittsburgh Steelers. They can't win without him. So he's too instrumental in what the Steelers do as an organization. That's going to get done. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. You've got the situation with Terry McLaurin. It's kind of the same deal that the Steelers have with TJ Watt. It's not a matter of if it's going to get done, it's when. Feels like before training camp, just like TJ Watt feels like before training camp. Just like Trey Hendrickson and even Shamar Stewart to a lesser degree all feel like before training camp, right? So the fact that the Bengals have restarted talks with Hendrickson is a good sign that maybe something gets done sooner rather than later. I at some point the Bengals are going to have to relent on the language with the Shamar Stewart contract and come around to their senses there, because they don't want to run the risk of him being able to re-enter the 2026 NFL draft and lose their first round draft pick. Nobody wants any parts of that. So he has all the leverage here. He holds all the cards, and they'll eventually have to come around, even though they don't want to. And so these are the things that I know I'll be kind of looking out for. Ramsey's an interesting situation because clearly he's not going to play another snap for the Miami Dolphins. Now the question becomes, where is he going to end up? They're not going to just release him, because if they were going to do that, they would have saved themselves money by doing it before June 1st. Being that he's still on the roster, they're willing to eat the money that he was paid, the extra bonus that was coming via the roster bonus, him being on the roster post June 1, to trade him and get something for him. They're clearly going to hold out. And, this may work out in their favor, because if you get an injury to a corner in training camp and he's still on their roster, that's when the value of a Jalen Ramsey might skyrocket, and they may be able to get somebody for a second round pick who's desperate. They feel like they're a championship contender. They just lost a corner for the entire season. Ramsey's available, and now you got to give up some capital that you didn't imagine yourself having to give up. So we'll see what happens with that situation. So a lot to still parse through. Don't think Kirk Cousins is going anywhere. Feel like his ship is sailed. But again, we say that, and the same thing I just said about Jalen Ramsey. A team's quarterback goes down, and all of a sudden you feel like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And there's Kirk Cousins sitting there, and maybe all it takes is a third round pick to pry him from Atlanta, and you have to eat a portion of his contract or whatever. So there could be some interesting dynamics, but right now, the only thing that we should, as fans, be looking for are these contracts that have yet to be resolved, these contract extensions and guys looking to get paid. That's pretty much where we are in the offseason now. So that is going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the the 509th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. NBA Finals Game 5 is tonight. Pivotal Game 5. Generally, when you got a 2-2 series, the winner of Game 5, my guess is, I don't know the exact numbers. You're going to see it at least 5 times tonight. They're going to show it. Probably 70% of the time, 75% of the time, the winner of Game 5 goes on to win the series. More times than not. But Indiana, they're different, man. They've proven this postseason time and time again that they're different. They've gone on the road. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I said that they have been the road team, the lower seeded team in all of their series. I think they were the 4 seed in Milwaukee. I know they finished with a better record than Milwaukee did this season. So I think they were the number 4 seed because I think when they played the Knicks in the conference finals, the Knicks were the 3 seed and they were the 4 seed, and that's how the Knicks had home court advantage. So you might want to fact check me on that, but I think they were the 4 seed, but I know they won both of those games in Milwaukee. I think they lost game 3 in Milwaukee, I think, because they didn't sweep them. They won the first 2 at home. They lost game 3 in Milwaukee. Then they won game 4 in Milwaukee. And then I think they finished them out in 5, if I'm not mistaken. Then they went on the road and won the first 2 against Cleveland. And they did the same thing to New York. And then they won game 1 against OKC. So they've been tremendous on the road. But I don't think they were the 5th seed. They were the 4 seed in first round, I believe. Again, I could be wrong about that, but this is a big one tonight. Anyway, I digress. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. I will be back later on tonight. We'll be chopping it up. Louie's lurking in the comments. We'll get to a number of your comments and break some of those down and talk about those tonight. Tomorrow, I will have a reaction to the Summer Series episode with Robert Littau from Black Sports Entertainment. That dropped on Saturday, so I'll have a reaction video for that on tomorrow. Tomorrow night, we may get into a command post show. I may have something for you then. I think this week, the Commanders Kings will be on Thursday, I think is where we're kind of heading towards. We'll see. Don't quote me on that. It's a fluid situation. So schedule is going to be all over the place now, obviously, because we've hit officially the dead period. But don't worry. I'll keep you guys busy here on the channel. Anyway, I digress. You guys have a good one. Take care. God bless. And good night.